This season, Instacart has your back to school. As in, they've got your back to school lunch favorites like snack packs and fresh fruit. And they've got your back to school supplies like backpacks, binders, and pencils. And they've got your back when your kid casually tells you they have a huge school project due tomorrow. Let's face it, we were all that kid. So first, call your parents to say I'm sorry, and then download the Instacart app to get delivery in as fast as 30 minutes all school year long. Get a $0 delivery fee with your first 3 orders while supplies last. Minimum $10 an order. Additional terms apply.
Good evening, Andy. How are you, mate?
I'm very good, thank you very much. And yourself?
I'm very well, thank you. Did you receive that short pass?
I did, yes.
Fantastic, and welcome all to part 3 of Book Corner with Andy from myfootballbooks.com and me, the Cabbie, where we sit down with a glass of something. I've got a little glass of red wine. What's your tipple this evening?
I've got a Diet Coke, would you believe?
In sobriety, totally.
Yes, I know. It's I'm not sure why I've ended up with this. I don't normally drink it, but yeah, I've ended up with a Diet Coke this evening.
And we mull over a load of books that we've either been given, what Andy's been promoted through Facebook and Twitter and Instagram on his wonderful pages, My Football Books. And the current view, support your project. We give you a shout every week on our weekly podcast with the Idol of Hillsborough, Mr. Terry Curran, and you always give us your recommendations. Before we get into your recommendations this month, a little brief history about myfootballbooks.com, your newsletter, your subscriptions, how people can link up with you, your wonderful badges, your mugs, your merchandise, and your bookmarker is still on page 105. I was wrong last month of Grandad. What was football like in the 70s? And I want what you've been reading this month as well. So firstly, how can people connect with you, Andy?
They can connect with me on the Twitter at My Football Books. I'm also on Facebook at My Football Books, and also have an account on Instagram as well. So, but yeah, you can contact through there, but also through the website. So at www.myfootballbooks.com. So you can contact me through there, Gabbie. Yeah.
And if people subscribe, go onto your website and subscribe. They have a monthly newsletter, which is absolutely fantastic. And I did interact with you yesterday, commending you on such a wonderful website, great presentation, and a great job that you do promoting the book. So what have you been reading this month? You know what I've been reading, absolutely zip. But I have done a number of podcasts and looking through YouTube and interacting with fans of Alan Hudson and Terry Curran, etc., etc. So what have you got your nose into this month, sir?
Okay, well, this month I've been reading, and what I'm currently reading at the moment is something slightly different. It's Panini football stickers. I can't recall we mentioned it last month, but it's the official celebration and nostalgic journey through the world of Panini. So. And the sticker books, and you just open it. I'm looking at it now. It's just like it takes you back to all your memories of when you were a child, etc. And probably I'd get one now if I knew where you could buy them, really. But it's just a trip through history, and it's a fantastic read. And a couple of other books I've read this month is Be Good, Love Brian. A chap called Craig Broomfield has written a book about him and his brother that was taken under. By Brian Clough many years back, of course, and a few others really. So it's been good. It's been a fantastic year for football books again, and I've got a few on the go at the moment, and I'll go into a bit more detail, Gabbie.
Superb. We're just going to go through your recommendations this month, what you've sent us. Bloody Southerners. The story of Brian Clough and Taylor's days at Brighton Hove Albion, the Brighton and Hove Albion Odyssey by Spencer. Is it Vignes or Vignes? I couldn't pronounce his name.
I'll probably get it wrong as well, Gabbie, but I think it's Vignes, I think. That's what I'm going for. So it's definitely Spencer. So, but I think Vignes is what I'll go for.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's what I got on the current view. It's Vignes.
Yeah.
I couldn't pronounce the Wonder Team, the Rise and Fall of Austria's Wonder Team by Joe Araf. I did stumble over the name on the current view as well. It's Generazo. I can't pronounce that word, but I'm kind of guessing that it's Austrian for the generation of the Wonder Team.
Right.
You know.
Yeah,
I'll work that out.
You're right. Yeah. Cracking read as well. So, four eyes of that team, a cracking team in the 1930s. But I was going to attempt it, but I'm not. No, I'm not. I was going to attempt it again, but yeah, the rise and fall of Austria's wonderful team. So, cracking book by Joe Araf. It came out in the summer of this year. So, and just again, when you think back to some of the teams, and it was led by the Hugo Mezzo.
Yeah, Mezzo,
was obviously one of the most prominent figures in European football, and he proved hugely influential, and he quickly became household name. That team did, defying all the odds, etc. So, but it's a cracking book. Takes you on a bit of a journey through a forgotten era. You know, examining the genesis basically of his side, etc., and the key figures and. And the historical importance of it, really. And at the time of,
Absolutely, and a coach that was very instrumental even earlier than the 30s with the great Hugo Meisel was Jimmy Hogan. And you do then send us an On This Day, and it was the podcast we done on the 16th of November this year, and it was the very day that Hugo Meisel was born. So, happy birthday back in November 1881 to the great Hugo Meisel. Football's Braveheart by Mike Donovan, the story of one of the greatest football players ever to grace a pitch, Dave Mackay. And then I think it was the early years of the FA Cup that you sent us. The British Army helped establish the world's first football tournament by James W. Bancroft. And you did send us the origin stories by Chris Lee, who's got a wonderful website, blog, etc. outside right. But as yet, we haven't recorded episode 99 of The Current View, but we're hoping to get it back on track very soon.
Excellent. Some cracking books listed off there. But come on, this one. But that last one being the origin stories by Chris Lee. Yeah, he does Outside Right, which is another great podcast where he talks about football from he talks in the number of years and through the years, etc. But great book, great listen as well.
But the wonderful thing of all these books is the knowledge that these guys have got that have written these books. I mean, you read them, I look at the covers and I think they're very pretty. I have them in my collection. I'll give them a shout, retweet and share, etc., etc. But I just don't find the damn time to sit and read them. I wish that I could, but I don't. But I do have them for research purposes. And in terms of the origin story, I think the cover... so let's just start with this book. The cover is absolutely fantastic. It's an old leather football with literally the world on the football, isn't it? It's just genius, and I love the colours as well.
Well, it's Pitch Publishing, and obviously they're graphic designers. You can see a number of books that have come out. They obviously know what they're doing. It's brilliant, isn't it? It's really does stand out, etc. I think Pitch Publishing have pulled it off again, really, haven't they? But it's a cracking read. And just going back to your book, I think I'll have to set you a task for next month, Gabbie, to finish that book. So get off page 105. Because you've actually gone backwards. I thought you were on 111.
I know. It was a mistake from me last week.
Was it?
I did. I looked at the page. I thought, well, I've got to look. Am I past it? I thought, blimey, it's 106 here, not 111. So I thought, well, I'm sorry, I tell a lie. It's 105. I'm regressing as we talk.
Oh yeah,
but yeah, I do.
Yeah, but going back to the origin stories, now that's a cracking book, and you'll take your while, mate. This one's almost 400 pages, but it's brilliantly written as well. It takes you kind of, if you link it back to the cover, like you say, the picture of the world, and it takes you around the world. Starts off in England, because obviously that was where the football was founded in it can go back many, many years earlier than the 18th century kind of thing, but England, and then Scotland, Wales, etc., and how it went around the world from there to South America, etc., and its influence across the globe, really. But it's a brilliant book, and it's really easy to read as well, the way he takes it through, and he picks out all those pioneers, the names you've heard of, some you've not heard of, etc. But he's got a fountain of knowledge. It's incredible, and I know he's got another book on the way next year. So I don't know what it's about yet. I don't think he's announced it as of yet. So it'll be interesting to see what comes out of that. But I think it's classic in that the kind of books like this one, there's so much to learn about the beautiful game. But it gives it such more depth, let's say.
Yeah, I call these people the educators. They do podcasts.
Yeah.
They write books. They have full-time jobs as well, some of them. And then you have people like me that do podcasts and are absolute muppetry. You know, I mean, these guys have forgotten more than I'll ever know about the game. But you're right. I mean, you look through and there's some wonderful pictures. I do like looking at the pictures in books. I can get the pictures.
Yeah.
No problem, absolutely. And there's a wonderful picture here at the early photo of the Sheffield Football Club, founded in 1887. Well, they're still going now, aren't they? So that they would still be the oldest, but they're not a professional football club in the Football League. And a picture here of the Corinthian Casuals on the return to play the Corinthians Paulista in Sao Paulo in 2015, because there's a great little link up with the Corinthian Casuals and the Corinthians. A lovely picture of Queen's Park FC from 1880 to 1881, and I could go on. Oh, Bohemians! I didn't realise that they were Dublin's oldest football team.
Early 90s, early 1900s.
Go on, have a guess.
Oh, I'm going to say 1906. 907.
Oh, God, I'm out. 1905. So it goes, and it shows you pictures of lots of, as you say, football's pioneers and the earliest teams in the respective countries. So well done, Chris Lee. And check out at the Outside Right podcast. And while we're talking about podcasts and the Outside Right, got to give a mention to these Football Times, another of my educators. That gang of guys produce some fantastic podcasts and some fantastic books as well.
They do. Gary Thacker, being one of them. So he's wrote a couple of fictional books as well as some cracking non-fiction books, including the likes of The Beautiful Bridesmaids, Dressed in Orange, about the Dutch team. So that's another cracking cover as well. Kind of, it's a photo of Johan Cruyff, etc. But you've also got Stuart Horsfield. I think he's working on a new book as well, I believe, in the next year. Again, I'm not sure what that's on, but his book was one of our picks of last year, as 2020, is 1982 Brazil and the glorious failure. So it's one of those rare stories where the team that didn't win it was probably more famous than the team that did win it. It was Italy, of course, wasn't it, in 82, but everyone remembers the Brazil team of that World Cup. So I know, great these Football Times, great podcast and collection of writers there, definitely. Yeah,
you're absolutely right, because people do mistakenly say that you never remember the runners-up. Well, I remember Hungary in 54. I mean, I remember, well, I don't remember them, but I've read about them because they fascinate me. I do remember the Dutch team in 74. and also the Dutch team in 78, and I remember the Brazilian team in 82. So pretty much in my informative years of watching World Cups, I remember the losers more than the winners because of what they gave the game. And I think that it's very easy to forget teams and players, even though they're winners, but they didn't entertain you. And I think that within the confines of those three, Hungary, Holland, and Belgium, they entertained and they left that indelible mark on our game. And there's some fantastic books that we can look at, we can read, we can share, and people can read how fantastic those people, players, and events were.
There's actually a book on called The Jaws of Victory, Text from the Jaws of Victory. I'm not getting the full title quite right, but there's a book that came out last year which talks through all those clubs like you've listed there, that the nearly run teams, etc. And there's like you've listed there, there's a catalogue of them, isn't there? But you remember them fondly.
Absolutely.
Even if they didn't get their hands on the glory.
Well, we did mention Brazil in 1982, and I've got a book here. I was looking through YouTube last night, and I typed in Garrincha, and I watched I watched a YouTube clip about some fella that was trying to educate everybody about Garrincha. And it started off where he says, well, Garrincha, he got his name because he was little and he's a little bird. No, he never. Garrincha actually means little bird in Portuguese because there's no Brazilian language. They take the Portuguese language. They're the only country in South America that do so. The rest have Spanish as their language. So and Garrincha does mean little bird. He's absolutely correct. But he was given that nickname because Garrincha liked to shoot little birds. Yes. They were wrens, or a bird that was like a wren. It was a little bird that's in Brazil, and he used to like to go out with a rifle and shoot them, and that's how he got his name, Garrincha, the little bird, by shooting wrens. He actually shot football players. I mean, not with a rifle, but he shot many down, and he particularly in the 1962 World Cup finals, and many Brazilians would argue that Garrincha was the greatest Brazilian ever. He was born with a spine injury, and that's why his one leg was longer than his other leg. If you're looking,
he looked as if he could barely walk, didn't he? But with a ball at his feet, he had such a poise, didn't he? An elegance about him. But you forget about a lot of the injuries he had. I
think that when you look at people, and I started reading the book. I read it up to he lost his virginity with a goat, but apparently that wasn't uncommon for young Brazilian boys back in those days. He was from his relatives were a tribe of Indians, and it's Roy, spelled R-U-Y, Castro, that wrote the book. And he was, as I was reading it, as I was understanding it, he was pretty much saying it's unbelievable, really, because the one tribe were cannibals. It's amazing that they never ate each other. And that, in South America in those days, that's what things were like. But it is a great read. I mean, he was an alcoholic. He died very young. I believe he literally fathered an unbelievable amount of children, and he was an absolute character. But as his teammate said on the documentary that I was watching of Garrincha, he wasn't the sharpest tool in the box. And when they absolutely smashed Russia and sent him home, he said, "Well, what are they doing going home? When's the second leg?" No. World Cup, you played him yesterday. We knocked them out. They're going back to Russia. Oh, okay. And he would sometimes not turn up and be playing football with the local kids on his beach. I mean, Garrincha was just I think when you're looking at Football Mavericks, which I love Mavericks.
Yeah,
I think
he was definitely one of them.
Garincha was up there, probably the godfather of the Mavericks. So, guys, check that out. Garincha, Little Bird, the triumph and tragedy of Brazil's forgotten hero, and he has been forgotten.
Definitely, and it's definitely one of those books. Really, it literally doesn't. We can't do it. I don't think really justice talking about it. It's one of those books you've got to read. Really, because some of the stories are just like, it's definitely you're reading, you're thinking, is this for real?
Yeah.
It's actually for real. It's phenomenal, and like you say, what a maverick. And sadly, there's a bit of a theme, isn't it, with Mavericks? Like when you think of Georgie Best, etc. The alcoholism, etc. But in terms of the love of the game, etc. What you picked out then, he was one of them, definitely, wasn't he? So, but yeah, and died sadly at the age of 49. So, cool, yeah. Far too young. But what a career! What a biography that is. Definitely, it's one of the top ones out there.
Yeah,
recommend it.
I think you could say without any fear of doubt that Garincha crammed more into his short life than most would have crammed in if they'd lived to about 1,000 years of age.
Yeah.
He was just, and the term maverick is given in a derogatory and also in a godlike manner as well. For me, it's a godlike manner. Maverick means to me somebody that is uncontrollable, uncoachable. They do things off the cuff, and that's what football is all about for me. And that's why I like to watch players like that can do things out of the ordinary and aren't just a component of a team. Garincha, you would say to Garincha, the team sort literally would just go out and play, son. Play with a smile on your face, because you can't coach, you can't tell a player like Garincha how to play football. He was just a one-off. So
Well, whenever we think of football, whenever we think of the players we watch, you always think of that one player that stood out. Then, doesn't it? You literally almost watch that player as the rest of the game's going on. You watch him being transfixed, don't you? So you think of there's a book, the Mavericks, as I'm sure you've read by Rob Steen, where he talks about the flamboyance and some of the flair players like Alan Hudson, obviously Rodney Marsh, Charlie George. The list goes on, isn't it? But they've all got that kind of Frank Worthington, one of the sticks out as well for me. Is they've all got that little bit of there's a magnet about him, isn't there? That traps your eye, kind of thing. And it's just, And that's a Garincha. Fits nicely up the top there.
Absolutely, and Stan Bowles was a maverick, and
Stan Bowles,
Tony Curry was always deemed a maverick. He was on the pitch, but Tony wasn't a maverick off the pitch. But again, these are players that just gave us things that were special, and we will forever remember them. And I just think that it is sad that when people talk about who's the greatest player ever, and they go, well, Messi is the best ever, or Ronaldo is the best ever, and the likes of Di Stefano and Puskas and players of the 50s and 60s are often forgotten, and it's really unfair, because I think if you could put in a time vault and move Garincha to, like, in a modern day football TARDIS and put him there today on the football pitch, he probably would be the greatest player on the planet, bar none.
Absolutely. You talk about the football pitch, and I'm sure Messi and Ronaldo, they're fantastic footballers, and they're gazettes, but the pitches you used to play on were not the quality of the pitches that they play on now, are they? They're not these, these perfect turfs, especially in the 70s and the 50s, etc. The pitches were, you didn't get much grass on them, did you? Many of them. So, and the likes of Garincha, they played on the beach, didn't they, etc. So, so that's where they learned the game. But
to be fair though, what I've looked at Garincha, if they had grass on it, he'd probably smoke it, wouldn't he?
True. Yeah.
So, that's
what a character.
Yeah, that's my opening book. What have you got for us? What have you brought to the party? Because this is very much unscripted. I don't even have any bullet points. I just bring a number of books that I have a look at. I want to talk about the Major League Soccer, the Cup final this Saturday. But what have you got for us, Andy? What's your first book? What have you sourced for us?
Well, thank you for your comments about my newsletter. I send out monthly as well. I'll probably
it's brilliant, mate.
Thank you very much. So, obviously, if you just go onto the website and subscribe. There's no charge or anything like that. You literally just subscribe on there. And I do it on the 1st of every month as well. So, but if I just mention on that, there was 3 of it I picked out for this month. First one being The Beautiful History. It's by guys called Martin Routledge and Elspeth Wills. And it's one of these. It's a picture book in many ways, so it's obviously got a lot of words in it as well. But I love the history as well, Connie. If there was a topic outside of football, I'd pick the history. I've always had a bit of an interest in that as well. So, but it's kind of links to both, and it talks about the football club badges that tell the story of Britain, and it's just really clever. The guys that do the 2 of them, they did another book a couple of years back called The Beautiful Badge. And it's just a stunning looking book. And this one is illustrated by a guy called Adam Forster. And it basically tells the story of Britain, but through club badges. It's a unique way he's done it. And he does it in particular order, right from the prehistory through to the Romans, the Normans, Tudor, etc. And he picks out how, like the emblems. So that what you get on that's it, coat of arms. He links it back to where that came from, etc. So it's just fascinating. It's a brilliant idea, but it's a cracking history lesson as well. So it links all of them things as well. But beautiful, really well presented. Again, Pitch Publishing, but a really nice, well presented book as well. So that'll be my first one I'd pick out, and that came out. I'm sure, it was earlier this year. So, but it's it's like it says on the back, holds all the answers and links to football for your key dates of 1066, 1588. It's just unique, absolutely unique, and really clever, them duo. So that's one I'll pick out, Beautiful History. Another one I'd recommend is called 32 Programs by Dave Roberts. Now, sadly, I picked this one because sadly Dave Roberts, he passed away just a couple of weeks, less than 2 weeks ago. Yeah, so I wanted to pay homage to him. He was a wonderful football author. He wrote a number of books, not just on football, but there was one book he wrote that shot into fame almost. It was called The Bromley Boys. And it actually turned out to, you probably have. I think it was around about 2006 when he wrote it. And only a couple of years later, it was turned into a film. Feature film, and I think I'm trying to think who was in the film. It was Alan Davies and Martin McCutcheon from EastEnders. They were in it. So
I don't even watch much TV. No,
but no, it turned into a film, and it's about him when he was a child, when he grew up and supporting Bromley FC, etc. But a brilliant book, and he wrote a number of other books as well. And the one I'm picking out is 32 Programs, which is such a. It sounds, when you say it's a book about 32 programs, you're thinking, well, that can't be really the pull of a story. But it's brilliant. It's the way he does it, because basically he's relocated to America, to USA, and his wife informs him, Liz, that he's got a collection of over 1,000 programs, and he tells him you can't take all of them with you, and he's got to reduce it down to 32 programs, so he can fit it in this Tupperware box container and take it with him. And but it's the way he writes. He tells why he picked those 32 programs, and it's just a little bit about his life story, why, and the programs and what they mean and link to him, etc. And it's quite a romantic story as well. But it's an absolute brilliant read. 32 programs, and if you even if you look on Amazon, you see it's 5-star ratings, and there's got over 100 odd kind of recommendations. But brilliant book, brilliant author. And my heart goes out to his wife, Liz, and his family. So such sad news when I heard he passed away a couple of weeks ago. So not that I knew him, but I interacted with him every now and again through Twitter as well. So big shame, but I suppose if you take anything from it, his words will live on. So fantastic author, Dave Roberts.
Well said, Andy.
And the third one I'd recommend for this month is Daniel Gray. So Saturday, 3 p.m. it's called. Daniel Gray is a brilliant writer. It's these little books. When I say little, they're like handheld, but it's 50 stories basically, the delights of modern football. And it's and if I can explain it, on the back you've got a quote that says, "Gray writes like Lowry paints."
Wow.
Superb. He is. He's got an unbelievable way of words. Absolutely brilliant. It's the things that you know and you realise kind of thing, but you never kind of realise in a weird way. So he picks out the kind of delights of going to the game. So in this particular one, so he's done other books as well, but he says about when you see the ground from the train the first time, and he just writes how it makes you feel. And we've all got our own pre-match routines, that first day of the season. And another one he's got in here, and he talks about when you hear Jimmy Armfield's voice and how it makes you feel. So and it's just little stories like that which makes you, do you know what I mean? It's just, it's about the little things that you love. The Jimmy Armfield, I'm just trying to get the quote actually he mentions in here. Because Jimmy Armfield, there's certain commentators, when you hear them, it does whisk you back a little bit, doesn't it? When you watch some of the old clips, etc., from football. But he puts here Jimmy Armfield's voice. Sometimes when I hear Jimmy Armfield speak, sometimes when Jimmy Armfield isn't speaking, I swear I can hear him smile. Yeah. I love that line. So when you hear his voice, it's like you're listening to a bit of a love letter of the game, etc. But brilliant book, Saturday 3 p.m. So all about little story.
That's when football should be played, on Saturday at 3 p.m. You talking about Jimmy Armfield there? I was given a book. I went to a tribute night for Aston Villa winning the Football League in 1981 and then winning the European Cup in 1982. And it was a wonderful evening at the Britannia Sports Bar in Wollaston. That was part one. I'm going to part two next Monday. And Jimmy Armfield there, as you referenced, David Lane from Pitch Publishing gave me this wonderful book. He gave me a couple of books. I'm going to talk about the others shortly. But the first one is Tottenham's Three Lions for Club and Country by John Chambers. And it's like everything that David does at Legends Publishing. Absolute quality. The pages are wonderful. The presentation, the content, just fantastic. And it's a coffee table book. It's one of them books that I like because you don't have to read it from page 1 through to the end of the book. You can dip into it. And I dipped into it on page 133, and it's the England team. It's a photograph that started the first match in the 1962 World Cup in Chile. Back row, Jimmy Armfield, Bobby Moore, Maurice Norman, Ron Springett, Ron Flowers, Ray Wilson. Front row, Jimmy Greaves, Brian Douglas, Jerry Hitchens, Johnny Haynes and Bobby Charlton. Now, Jimmy Greaves always said that the best team ever to represent England was in 1962, and I won't disagree with that given the names in that photograph. I didn't see them, but I've read about them, and they are absolute legends, every one of them. In fact, when I'd done a recent podcast with Big Ron, he named his all-time Aston Villa 11. Jerry Hitchens was his central striker with Andy Gray.
Excellent. I know, great history there. Great team, wasn't it? A lot, but obviously you think about the team for 4 years later, don't you? 66, and rightly so, because of course of what they achieved, etc. But it's quite.
But I do think there's an argument there that the 1966 World Cup obviously was a home tournament for England. Had those boys in 1962 had played in 66, they couldn't, of course, because it was 4 years on, and those players were in their pomp at that time. But when you look at we won it in 66, there's an argument the team in 62 in Chile and 1970 in Mexico were greater sides than the team that actually won it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'd agree with that.
And again, going back to what we were saying about Hungary and Holland and, the wonderful Brazilian teams, it isn't always the team that wins it that we remember or the team that played the best football, but those icons of English football of 62 and 1970, I think that are forgotten, and they shouldn't be, because I think that there's an argument that they were better than the boys of 66.
Definitely. You could bring it up to a modern kind of, I think probably about 15 years ago. Do you remember we had I can't remember what we used to call them in England, but you had the likes of Beckham, Gerrard, Lampard, Scholes. Names are incredible, aren't they? But they never achieved anything, did they, on the international stage? But great collection of footballers. It just, in some ways, reminds me of that, doesn't it? So they never quite achieved what they should have achieved.
Absolutely.
Really. So,
yeah. I mean, again, this is football, because what happens is people do tend to forget that you might be watching your football team, but they're playing against another football team that equally wants to win it, and they've got some great players as well. So, you know, you can have an off day in a cup tournament and you get knocked out, whereas you can then sometimes play really poorly and then get the rub of the green and go through. And sometimes in a cup you can get your way to the final and then win it. You have something fortuitous and you go on, and then your names are always remembered because you won. But for me, that's not the way I remember the teams and the players, whether they won, they lost, or they drew, because it isn't just the winners that we remember. For me, it isn't. It's what you do with football.
Yeah, and you've linked it to books. It's the stories they make, isn't it, really?
Absolutely. And another book from the wonderful Legends Publishing here, from my good friend Colin Abbott, is Aston Villa, the first 150 years. And I turned it to page 167, and the Yorkshire Evening Post, the 20th of December 1911, there's a piece in there. William McGregor, the father of the Football League, had died at his residence in Handsworth, Birmingham this afternoon.
Right.
And outside Villa Park, there's a statue of William McGregor. And have a guess how old he was when he died? Because we tend to think that these people, like the father of the game, he must have been like really, really old.
Yeah, you do.
But he wasn't.
You're giving me a bit of a hint then. So, 40?
He was 64 years of age when he died.
64.
Yeah. I mean, that's no age. I mean, okay, back then it probably was a ripe old age, you know, in the early 1900s. But, you know, you look at McGregor and you think this old bloke, this father of the game. But, yeah, he was only 64 years of age when he passed away. So a wonderful book by Colin, by John Farrelly and John Russell, published by the fantastic Legends Publishing Company, and it's just another coffee table book that you can flick through with, again, my kind of book, lots and lots of pictures and little captions about Aston Villa through the ages. And he's doing another book that's coming out, I believe it's 2023, which coincides with the 150th anniversary of Aston Villa that were formed. I believe it was the 20th of November, 1874. So 23-24, that'll be the 150th year. Fantastic.
Yeah, what a history as well, isn't it? So, but no, Legends Publishing, just to echo what you're saying in terms of their books, they're always just great quality, aren't they? They are classic, your coffee table books when you walk into someone's house and you see it on the, you go, oh, what's that? It's one of them kind of books, isn't it? And you pick it up, and like you say, you can easily pick it up, look at it, walk away, come back, etc. But quite often you get transfixed in some of these books, especially the ones that, like that, the Villa books. I know which one you're referring to as well. You kind of get lost in the photos as well, don't you? In terms of the history that's involved, etc. So, but no, fantastic. Could I just mention as well, I don't know if you were going to mention it, but there's another book that I got recently from Legends Publishing, which again is written by Colin Abbott, is Barton's Army.
Thank you very much, sir, because I was just going to mention that, but you please mention it.
Yeah, it's the Barton's Army conquering Europe with Aston Villa. So I've only glanced through it, so I've not read it in full, but again, it's obviously the story of the European Cup triumph in 1982, obviously Aston Villa's finest hour, and it's written by, well, it's a combination of stories from the Aston Villa armies, it says on the front, and it takes you through really through the games and the stages, etc. It's just great photos in here as well, isn't there? You've seen it, so just great memories. It's brilliant that he's managed to keep all of these photos as well, really. So I'm not sure what I did when I was at that age, etc. But yeah, it takes you through from Dynamo Berlin, then to Dynamo Kiev, Anderlecht, and obviously that final when they achieved the ultimate goal.
They certainly did, and I've done a couple of podcasts with the class of '81 and that team that won the league in '81, First Villa team for 71 years, when they took the title at Highbury. They then went on to win the European Cup, and what we also do tend to forget, they beat Barcelona 3-0 and took the Super Cup as well. So Villa took everything. Sadly for Villa, they did get beat against Penarol, so they didn't take the World Cup in club terms, if you like. But they certainly did the Football League. They then went on and won the European Cup, and then they won the Super Cup. But I've done some wonderful podcasts, in particular with Dennis Mortimer and Tony Morley to date. And Dennis has taught me through all of the rounds of the European Cup. So if you go onto SRBMedia, you can listen to Dennis relive those halcyon days of Aston Villa. And I think Colin has encapsulated it fantastic. And it's through the eyes, of the fans as well that were there through those times of winning the league and then going on and winning the European Cup. And it's their stories, and it's a fantastic book. And Colin was there that night, and I hadn't met Colin before. The first thing I do, I went and give him a cuddle, because he's a great lad. And there's another book that he wrote, the Big Aston Villa Book of the 70s, which leads me nicely into my Author of the Week feature, which is Mr. Roy Cavanagh, MBE, well, he should be a Sir for what he's done, but he certainly is a member of the British Empire. And I caught up with Roy, and he told me all about the Manchester United Book of the 70s. And welcome, Roy Cavanagh, sir. How are you to Book Corner?
I'm very good, and delighted to be here with you, Paul. It's really enjoyable. I enjoy the crap when I'm on here.
You are my author of the month. We do this regular monthly podcast now with Andy from myfootballbooks.com, who promotes some wonderful football books. You have written so many fantastic football books about Manchester United. You've been so kind in sending me so many books. We've hooked up many times now doing podcasts. So we're going to be, for the first 10 minutes or so, just on Book Corner with Andy, passing ourselves back to Andy. Then we're going to be talking more in length about the Manchester United Book of the 70s. So first and foremostly, Legends Publishing, how can people purchase the book is the first question, because that's what we want it to do. Yeah. We want it to fly off the bookshelves, but Roy, we don't want it to fly too quickly off the bookshelves, because it could break your ankle or break your toe if it falls on you.
410 pages and 100 glossy coloured pictures, which for the 70s is remarkable, really, because obviously there's still a lot of black and white around at the beginning of the 70s. But yeah, it's available from legendspublishing.net. It is also on Amazon, so either way. But direct from the publisher at legendspublishing.net, or if you put the title of the book, Manchester United Book of the 70s, I'm sure you'll find it on Amazon as well.
How long did it take you to put this book together? Because all of David Lane's books from Legends Publishing, they are not just books, they are works of art, they're coffee table books, but you do need reinforced glass on that coffee table because they are so heavy. They're just wonderful, aren't they?
Yeah, he does tremendous publications, and he's meticulous with the coloured pictures, which is tremendous. It actually, I suppose, actual writing, probably 12 months, because I actually concentrated on that as opposed to other things, when I had spare time and weekends and whatever. But of course, you've then got the checking, which can take as long as the writing. Especially when you've got statistics and things such as that. One thing I learned very, very early in writing books, Paul, was once it's published, it invariably goes on the bookshelf, because if you open it and there is spelt wrong, As was spelt wrong, which is a bad word for me. I must admit, my wife helps me out greatly with that. Is it H-A-S or A-S, that one? It's just have a phobia about it. And then if you read something and it's Y-O instead of Y-O-U for you, there's nothing you can do with it then. It's there. So I just tell you a very quick little thing which changed it. One of my early books with Fred Eyre, who we spoke about before, I don't. In a way, he was a journeyman football because he played for 26 clubs. But he was a decent player, Fred, and he's got a great talent as after dinner speaker, and his writing is funny. He's got a quick wit, and we wrote this book together, and it was called What a Game. And in it, one of the things early doors that I didn't check as much as I should have done was pictures, because you've got the picture. And then you've just got a small caption underneath, haven't you?
Yeah.
Paul passes to Roy, bang, whatever. And this picture said one of the City, when they won the league in '68, they won at Newcastle 4-3 on the last day. And I'm sure it says something like Summerby scoring the fourth goal. And all that there is on the picture is the net and the ball going in the net. So, that after that I'm thinking, better check picture captions after this.
Yeah, they can catch you out at times, but it was still Summerby scoring the goal that hit the back of the net. It's a little bit like Puskas' goal in 1954 in Browne. There was no evidence of him actually kicking it, but then when they picked the ball out the net, yes, we're back on. We're back on filming now. Yeah, but yeah, absolutely. Because you do a lot of Man City referencing as well in your books, because you're a football fan of Manchester United, you're a Salford lad, and you're a big cricket fan as well. I do want to talk about the one game there involving City and Manchester United. Probably one of the most iconic games that they've ever played was the game where Dennis Law scored the back heel goal that ultimately, I don't think it was that goal that relegated United, although lots of people seem to think it was. What was the story behind that? And I think they only played 87 minutes of that game. It wasn't actually finished, was it?
No, you see, if we could have had the extra 3 minutes and 1-2-1 and might have stopped up. That wouldn't actually have been correct. But funnily enough, it was a club after your own heart. It was your own Birmingham City.
Yeah.
It was the first year, 73-4, of three up, 3 down. And United, Southampton and Norwich went down. But Birmingham, they had 2 great wins. They won the last 2 games comfortably. So consequently, if United had beat City, and I think Stoke on the last one, they still would have gone down. But why spoil a good story? I actually was at the game and I was right behind the goal. We used to be the old scoreboard end at United. When in the days when it was open, you'd have a big open Stretford end, which was like the old 10, and you had a big open end where there was just a scoreboard. And then, various cantilevers came round and covering came round. And the scoreboard end became what's known as K-stand. And in front of it was a standing paddock, and behind it was a cantilever stand. And I had a league, what was called a league match ticket book in those days, from when that opened in 72. So by this one, that was the second, third season. And I was halfway back, right behind the penalty spot, with a lovely elevated view. So I was right behind the goal. And of course, Dennis just instinctively does what he did when he got in the 6-yard box. He put the ball in the net. Yeah. And I'm 99% certain of this. He actually turned round. The City players came to celebrate. But, he just walked off. And he walked, because the tunnel in those days at Old Trafford was on the centre line. And he just walked and went up the tunnel. And I'm pretty sure that was the last ball he kicked for City. And in fact, it may well have been the last ball he kicked in Football League games, because he went to the 74 World Cup with Scotland, I'm sure of that.
Yeah, he did.
But I don't think he played in the 74-5 season. I've not doubly checked on that, but I'm pretty sure that was his last epitaph in football.
And when he walked down that tunnel, do you know where he went?
Yeah, I do actually. He went into the United dressing room.
He did, yeah, absolutely.
And then the United players were trooped in after him. They didn't say, what the effing hell are you doing in here type of thing. And they just sat down knackered around him. It's a cracking story, that, isn't it?
Absolutely. He was in tears, wasn't he, Dennis?
Yeah,
Jim McCalliog told me. He said, we walked in after the game. Yeah, because Jim played in that game. He said there was Dennis in the corner in tears. Yeah. I went round, consoled him and that, and when Tommy come in, because we thought it was going to go a bit balmy, because like with Tommy, did he sell him to City, or did he give him a free? It was a free, wasn't it?
Yeah, he gave him a free, so he could go anywhere. Yeah. And City, who were they were a decent side in those days. You had Colin Bell and still had Summerby playing for them, and I think he'd signed. Oh no, they hadn't signed. They might have signed Dennis Stewart. I can't remember, but and Joe Corrigan was there, and Tommy Booth. They were a decent side. Yeah. But Tommy Dock, quite disgracefully, really, let Dennis go on a free transfer. Mm. Now, he did have a lot of injuries towards the end of his career and everything, but I don't think it was just the fact he gave him a free transfer. I think it was the communication of him giving him a free transfer which was in doubt. And, of course, I think it led to, infamous law cases where, excuse the pun, cases where Tommy Dock, Willie Morgan, he accused him of lying and things such as that. And I think the Dock was found guilty, actually. But that is part of the book. If you want, I can tell you that part as well, because it's very interesting that the 73-4 season, when they actually did get relegated. That at the start of that season, in writing it, it was one of the most, I don't like using the word depressing, but it was one of the most awkward and no way enjoyable writing about United. I mean, you can write about United and Birmingham or whoever you want, and they win and lose. But this, with the passage of time and remembering each game, you looked at it and you thought, hang on a minute, we're starting the 73-4 season. Bobby Charlton's retired. Yep. Dennis has been let go disgracefully. Georgie was on walkabout. Yeah. We let Tony Dunn, who was a really top bloke, a top bloke, but a fantastic fullback. We let him go on a free transfer to Bolton, where he actually played another 5 seasons with Bolton. And then Cardinalson, Martin Buchan, who had the privilege of meeting again last week, to give him his copies because he wrote the foreword. They moved Martin Buchan, who was as good at number 6 as any in the country, and arguably around, they moved him to number 3, to left back. And, young Jerry Daly was given his debut, he was only 18. Brian Greenoff was only 19. Sammy Mack was 19, 20, something like that. And, you're looking at it and you're thinking, bloody hell, no wonder we're going to go down here. And actually, we just mentioned the man. We signed Jimmy McCalliog from the Wolves around the February, March. And, for that last 2 months, March and April, we played some really good stuff. And those were the best results we had. And Jimmy made a heck of a difference.
We're gonna pass back over now to Andy. You and I are going to continue. But just before we do pass back to Andy, December the 22nd, 1973, Stoke City and Manchester United were level on points. Stoke went on when Alan Hudson turned up at the Victoria Ground in January 74 and got to Europe. And sadly for Manchester United, they got relegated. But at Christmas, who was top goal scorer for Manchester United? It's quite incredible, isn't it?
It's Alex Stepney. Was it Alex Stepney?
Yeah, Alex Stepney, yeah. Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Well, many thanks, Roy. A fantastic encounter. And Andy, your memories of United of the 1970s, it was a truly pivotal decade for the Red Devils, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And just to got about Roy as well, so a prolific writer. He's wrote over 20 20 odd books, hasn't he? I know 6 of them on Man United just itself. So, but yeah, what it was an interesting time, wasn't it, for Manchester United in the 70s?
Yeah.
In terms of the whole journey. And his book, the big Manchester United book of the 70s, encapsulates that in terms of the journey they went through from start to finish. And it's a brilliant coffee table book in terms of the detail it goes into. And what always stands out for me as well when you look back at that time is some of the attendances as well after some of these games. So I've picked it random here. Look at it away at Norwich, 35,913. Carrow, some of the home to Sunderland, yeah. So you've got to get 50 odd thousand, etc. Yeah. Incredible attendances, isn't there? So, but yeah, quite a decade, wasn't it, for Manchester United? So, but the book itself is brilliant in terms of takes that through that journey, for the highs and lows, let's say.
Yeah, they were. Even the lows were quite high because they were only down so they were really pretty much on loan, wasn't they, to the second division back in those days. I mean, they got relegated the 73-74 season at Stoke City. It was Alan Hudson's mob that actually beat them and relegated them. It wasn't particularly Dennis Law's back heel, although Dennis Law's back heel did contribute to it. Birmingham City beating Norwich on the last day of the season. I was there as a 9-year-old kid. We went down 1-0 after about 6 minutes. It was either Duncan Forbes or David Stringer that scored the goal, and then Kenny Burns scored and Bobby Hatton scored the winner for Birmingham City. It kept us up, and United got relegated. But that season, I think the Doc had pensioned off Bobby Charlton. I think Bobby had said, I want to retire. I think his final game was at Chelsea in 73, wasn't it? So he didn't play that season. He'd retired. George Best, I think George had gone missing. And of course, Dennis Law got transferred to Manchester City and did score that back heel goal that led to the demise of Manchester United. But I caught up with Jim McCalliog as well at Jim's book signing, Wembley Wins, Wembley Woes. And Jim played in that game, and he was telling me on the final whistle, when United went to their dressing room, who should be sitting there in tears but Dennis Law.
Yeah, or in the home dressing room.
In Manchester United's dressing room. And absolutely, was absolutely gutted. Was the Law man, known to many as the King of Manchester. And talking of Kings of Manchester, I want to give another shout out to another book by Roy Cavanagh and Brian Hughes, MBE. Foreword by Sir Bobby Charlton, who's a CBE. So, he's the only thing that Bobby Charlton hasn't got. I think he's the MBE that Roy Cavanagh's got. And it's Dennis Violet, the life of the legendary goal scorer. And in many respects, the forgotten forward of Manchester United was Dennis Violet. What a player. And a lovely picture of Dennis striking the ball on the front cover. And in those days, the 50s, no badges. so your book must have started, I don't know when, but no badges in the 50s there on the United shirt.
Yeah, prolific goal scorer, wasn't he, Dennis Violet?
Incredible.
So he was top goal scorer at Manchester United for a good few seasons, wasn't he? So at least like 2 or 3 maybe.
And then in 62, he left and he went to Stoke City, joined Tony Waddington. Tony liked his strikers, he liked his inside forwards, and Dennis Violet, what a player. I was too young to remember Dennis, but Rachel, his daughter, had done a documentary a few years ago called A United Man, and that was a tribute to a late father, the wonderful Dennis Violet, who had such a great career. And I'd done a podcast with Roy Cavanagh, Too Good to Be Forgotten, when I talked to Roy about Dennis, and that's up on our socials. So if you want to check it out on SRB Media on Facebook, scroll down, and the interview that I'd done with Roy is on there, or just simply go to Spotify and type in there either SRB Media or Dennis Violet, Roy Cavanagh. Whatever you do, that's the nice thing about the robots of the modern world. You have to type into a search engine, and they present it to you like you would if we were sitting in a fine restaurant to our food and our drink. Robots are great.
They are, absolutely. Dennis Violet as well, I just remember because he went over to the United States, didn't he? He went over to America, obviously, after his playing career. I think, did he finish his playing career? Sorry, he finished his playing career in America.
Yes, he did. He went over there to America. He did come back and he played a little bit over here for one or two. Let me just find it here. Dennis Violet. Dennis Sidney Violet. Born 20th of September 1933 in Fallowfield, Manchester. United Stoke. He went over to Baltimore, and then he come back. He played for Whitton Albion and Linfield. It was Harry Gregg was the connection there that took him to Linfield. Played for England a couple of times, and then managed Crewe, Washington Diplomats, New England T-Men, Jacksonville T-Men. You like the T-Men, did Dennis. Jacksonville University, Richmond Kickers, and then Jacksonville Cyclones. But he was instrumental in the birth, or shall we say the rebirth, because America were playing pro soccer back in the 20s. It pretty much collapsed with the Wall Street collapse in the 30s. But Dennis was instrumental in the rebirth of professional footballer, NASL, in America.
And that's how I remember him, and it links it back to another book I can think of called The Rock and Roll Soccer by Ian Plentifleet, which is about the short life and fast times of the North American Soccer League. And that's how I remember Dennis Violet as well. Like you say, it was an instrumental part of that time when, it was it was entertaining to say the least, in terms of the amount of players they pulled over in that stage. Your Beckenbauers, your Cruyffs, your Pelé, of course, George Best, amongst other, during the 70s. It was quite a razzmatazz, let's say.
I think everybody and anybody that was a name in football played in America in those days. It was truly incredible. It literally was a who's who of football, wasn't it? And the greatest team out there, of course, in those days were the Cosmos. And there's a good book with Steve Hunt on with the Cosmos that come out this year as well, didn't it?
It did, yeah. Steve Hunt's last story, that came out. So I think on the picture you got him being picked up on the front of that book. Yeah. I think it's again Pitch Publishing, but he's being carried by Pelé. I've not got it in front of me, but it seems to stick in my head. He's being carried by Pelé, etc. But I'm with the Cosmos. That's it. It's just come back to me now. So, but yeah, absolutely. I think he started. I think he played at Coventry. He played in the West Midlands, mainly, didn't he?
Played at Villa. Played at the Villa. Played a couple of games at Villa. And I was listening to Steve. Can't remember. It might have been on a podcast or local radio. And he was saying that he just had a call. You want to come play with Pelé? And he'd only played a couple of games for the Villa. He was absolute Villa nut. And then when he come back, he played at Coventry City. And they had a good team at Coventry. Had Steve Hunt, Andy Blair, Gary Thompson. I remember, and in fact, Gary Thompson. In fact, Andy Blair was the host of the evening because Andy played in the European Super Cup game, and he was at Aston Villa. He joined Villa after Coventry City, but Cov had a really good team in those days, and Hunty was one of them. But it leads us nicely to on Saturday, the December the 11th at 3:00 Eastern Time. Portland Timbers take on New York City at Providence Park in the MLS Cup final. And I've got 3 books here by my good friend Adrian Webster, who was captain of Seattle Sounders in 1977 when they played soccer ball. Because in the NASL it was soccer ball. It wasn't the MLS Cup. It was very similar format, but it was soccer ball. And Seattle Sounders played the New York Cosmos. And everything that you want to know about that wonderful game, the players, how the season went, the playoffs, etc., etc. Lovely picture here of Adrian's ring as well, and Pele, and he's called the Ghost because he actually marked Pele out of the game. He played against Pele a couple of times. Eternal Blue, Forever Green, The Sounders in the 70s by Adrian Webster, and his book from 1968 to 2019, Circle of Life by Adrian Webster. And I was fortunate enough to cut a podcast with Aid about his career, and it's a fantastic listen. Again, it's on Spotify or it's on SRBmedia. What a great lad Aid was. Started his career off there at Colchester. In fact, he was there. He didn't play that game. He'd moved to another club at the time, playing non-league football. When Colchester beat the great Leeds United in 1971.
All right, yeah, excellent. Did he play? He played. Adrian Webster played alongside Pele, George Best. Did it? Was that the Seattle Sounders?
He played against absolutely everybody. I did in the 70s, as did Huddy. I mean, Huddy, by the time Huddy had got over there, Pele had retired, and some of the other players didn't return, because what a lot of them did, they went over in the close season. We had a lot of English players, didn't we, that played in the close season. When our season finished, they went over to America and played over there.
Yeah, it's absolutely incredible now, but it doesn't really happen now, does it? So
no, it doesn't. No, it's quite. I don't know why it's like that now, because back in those days, America was the place that the players would go. I mean, to be honest, I think they earn decent money as well out there in America. And Johan Cruyff, I think Johan Cruyff had retired from football and come out of retirement and played out there in America. I think he joined the Aztecs at first, Johan did. Memory serves me right. But I think he lost a lot of money, and he couldn't believe how much money they were offering him. So, yeah, of course I'm going to come out of retirement.
There's a few things you want to, and some of them offer you a lot of money, you would do, wouldn't you?
Well,
so,
of course you would.
You can't blame him at all. So, yeah, he was at the Aztecs, Los Angeles Aztecs. He was there for a while. And then they also went to Washington Diplomats. So I've got his book here, his autobiography, In My Turn, so that's how I know. But yeah, after that, he went back, actually. He did go back. He played for back at Ajax, and then he went to Feyenoord. He played there for a season.
There's a great book with, isn't that Fierce Genius?
That's it. Andy Bolan.
Yeah, that talks about Johan's last year playing football, because he played against Tottenham as well, didn't he? His last game in England was at Villa Park in 1978, but then when he'd retired, he actually come out of retirement, played in America, and then come back, didn't he? He was playing at Ajax, and for whatever reason, I think he was about 36, Ajax didn't want Johan Cruyff, so he said, all right, if you don't want me, I'm going to go and sign for Feyenoord.
Yeah, that's what it moved down.
That went down well, I bet, in Amsterdam.
You can imagine, can't you? Absolutely. There's a bit of a robbery over there, as well as many parts. Just
a slight one, yeah.
Yeah, the big cities like that.
But that book, the My Turn, the autobiography, who's it with? Someone De Goot?
The what, sorry? Say it again, sorry?
Who's the fella that he wrote it with? As a famous Dutch journalist, De Goot or something, wasn't it? My Turn.
Yeah, it is. Jack De Groot. Jack De Groot, that's it. Yeah, Jack De Groot.
I know Alan Hudson's read that book twice.
Has he really?
Oh, absolutely. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Uddy. Now, if we were doing my football books and it was you and Alan Hudson, Uddy could tell you all about football books, because Uddy is a great reader of football books. He reads everything. And Johan Cruyff was the greatest player that he ever played against. In fact, in 1970, they went to Amsterdam. He discovered Heineken and Johan Cruyff. Unfortunately, they had a little bit too much Heineken before they played Ajax, because Chelsea didn't realise how good Ajax were at the time, because we didn't have the media, we didn't have the TV, etc. that we have today. And when he looked up and he seen this lad with the number 14 shirt, what he says to me, he says, Paul, I thought he was one of the substitutes until he started playing football. And Uddy played against Johan 3 times, and I said to him, I said, did you ever ask him why he wore the number 14 shirt? Because I didn't know at the time. And Uddy said, Paul, I never got close enough to ask him that. What a genius. And Uddy said to me, you had to be on the pitch to understand and appreciate how great a player Johan Cruyff was.
Yeah, and he's confident in his own ability. I think we read his autobiography as well. So it's a really good book. It sometimes comes across as, but I think that's just his character. Sometimes comes across a little bit
arrogant.
Not aloof. It's not, arrogant. That's it. But it's not in a necessarily a bad way, is it? Arrogance. It's a confidence, isn't it, etc.
I think it gets misconstrued, and I think highly confident does sometimes come across as arrogance. And I don't think Johan was. I mean, he just tells the truth. I mean, if Johan Cruyff said, I'm the best player in the world, who are we to argue? Because he was. It's a bit like that with Pele. Because I remember I've read a couple of reviews that people wrote about Maita and Johan Cruyff. It's similar to Pele, actually, about his autobiography, that they say they come across a bit arrogant. But really, I think, actually, if you watch a documentary, there was one recently on Netflix, a Pele kind of thing, and he's self-deprecating. He walked in the room and, all his old teammates are there. He goes, the best man's here. He walked in. It's like that. But it's tongue-in-cheek. It's tongue-in-cheek. But everyone's sitting there going, well, he is though, isn't he? Yeah, exactly, yeah. You're not going to argue. It gets me when people say that. I mean, who was more confident than the great Mohammed Ali? I mean, he told everybody for an age that he was the greatest, and you couldn't argue with it. So if you can actually back it up, it's when you've got some kind of nomarch that kind of tries to tell people that he's the greatest footballer when clearly he isn't. But when Johan Cruyff or Pele come out with, I'm the greatest, well, they are. But Mohammed Ali used to do that. There's a great story in my latest podcast, My Life, My Music, with Uddy. When I said the first time I got a glimpse of you was 1973, when Chelsea come to town and beat Birmingham City 4-2. He says a great story about that, Paul. He thought it was Frazier, but it wasn't. I looked it up today. He said the day before, as he said to me, would you fancy a drink? We're going to go out. And they went out and watched Ali and Ken Norton. It was when Ken Norton beat Mohammed Ali. He said the next day they come and destroy Birmingham City. I said, what is it with you, Uddy? Every time you come to Birmingham and I watched you as a kid, you'd had an absolute skinful the night before. You played a blind and you absolutely smashed us.
Excellent. Players with natural ability, they can do it, can't they?
But this is the thing with the Mavericks, they can, because you're right, they had that great ability, and the likes of Johan Cruyff had that great ability, and who can argue against anything that they say, because they were the Mavericks, they were the best, they were the greatest.
Well said, yeah, absolutely, spot on.
What else have you got for us, sir?
I'll just give you a shout out for a couple of other books, if that's okay. So, some books that's come. Just talking about, I suppose, a modern race, and he's still fairly young, I'm trying to think. But Jack Grealish, this is a book that came out, Super Jack, called The Jack Grealish Story, Britain's first 100 million player, written by Simon Goodyear. He's wrote a number of books.
He blocked me. He blocked me on Facebook.
Oh, right. So I haven't read it. I must admit, I haven't got around to reading it yet, but so it's about Jack Grealish, and I think, do you know, I did forget, he started his lone career at Notts County.
Yeah, he did score a great goal for Notts County, his first goal.
Yeah, that just helped him. You assume, you think of his Villa days, don't you, of course?
He played Gaelic football when he was a kid as well.
What, sorry?
Played Gaelic football when he was a kid.
Did he? Huh?
Yeah. That's how he got all his strength and stuff and what have you, Jack. In fact, I'm almost certain, because there weren't many Gaelic football pitches in Birmingham, but where my nan used to live, bless her, down Glebe Farm Road, she died when I was about 7 or 8. But I remember going down there and me being a mad football fan, always a mad football fan. I remember looking at these the one day and going, what are these doing, playing this funny ball and doing what they're doing? And I was told it was like Gaelic football, and it always stuck in my head, down Glebe Farm Road in Birmingham, Glebe Farm. Yeah, and I think that's where Jack started plying his trade as a kid. And then he went to Villa about 12, I think. something like that.
I'm sure this book could tell me more, so I'll give that a shout out. So, other books, another one for Legends Publishing, actually, to give a shout out, is called No, Nay, Never. And it's about the rivalry between Blackburn Rovers and Burnley. Yeah. So, and I've seen it a couple of times, and there's lots of football rivalries. We've touched on obviously in Amsterdam, etc. But the Lancashire derby, it's heated, to say the least.
It is quite brutal, that derby. I don't think a lot of people, if you're from that region, you understand it. But if you're not from that region, you kind of don't. But it is quite a brutal derby, isn't it?
It is, exactly. And it's, again, a beautiful book, same Legends Publishing. You just know you're guaranteed to get a good-looking book. This one's a right brick of a book as well. And it's a mixture of also great pictures. About 500 pages. But the rivalry between Blackburn Rovers and Burnley is amongst the fiercest of football. And it just talks about football on the cobbled streets of Victoria and East Lancashire, and how it's intense, often brutal. The contest where it literally the win is all important, and I think we all know that as football fans. When you think of your rival, that game, it's like the fixture list when it comes out at the start of the season, isn't it? You look for that game when you're going to play your rivals, the home and away, who you're going to play at Christmas, who you got on New Year, etc. But it stands out, doesn't it? But no, it's a cracking book, and I don't think it's just for Blackburn and Burnley fans. If you're a football fan, I think it's just gives you again another aspect in terms of how important it is to them. So shout out for that book. I look forward to reading that.
Just before you move on to your next book, I've got to say, I mean, Blackburn Rovers, what a team they were in the early days, and back in the 60s, what a team Burnley Football Club were as well, wasn't they? Two great traditional football clubs in East Lancashire.
Well, it's a hotbed of football, wasn't it? If you go to even North End, obviously go even further back, won't you? So,
Invincibles.
Absolutely, cracking book there as well. The Invincibles, but no, cracking. There's a number of teams all around that area, isn't there? So, and obviously to Manchester, etc., and further afield. But no, great clubs, proud fan base. So. Shout out to Conker's Editions, and this is one of the books I'm reading at the moment. It's a celebration of 90s footballs. Can We Knock It? It's Sid Lambert and Chris Skull. Sid Lambert is very well known on Twitter. He's got his handle is the Funny Old Game. So he's got thousands of and the Conker's Editions, who are the publishers. They're linked to the Got Not Got Lost World books, which there's many of them, but this particular book, Can We Not Knock It? It's all about the 90s, and it's just a brilliant book in terms of some of the stories. It really is, and some of the pictures as well. Can We Not Knock It? I think that's in reference to Graham Taylor when he was in England.
Do I not like that?
Do I not like that?
That's it. Like that. Carlton!
Brilliant documentary.
Where's Carlton?
It made you feel quite sad as well, Graham Taylor, because what a guy he was, what an incredible manager. The success he had in order to get him to there, and he was just a little bit ridiculed, wasn't he, by the media at the time. But it's a cracking book, and anyone from the 90s, you'll love it. And it's absolutely brilliant, it really is. Some of the stories are here as well. It's a classic trip down memory lane. So, and obviously it's the start of the Premier League. Never knew it would get to quite the beast it is nowadays, of course. But, and a couple of other shout-outs from Conker Editions as well. There's Flat Caps and Tangerine Scarves. It's the biography of Blackpool Football Club. Again, it's a lovely story. It's again lovely presented book, sorry. And it's basically it's a history, it's a biography of the club, but again it's all around the imagery as well, etc.
Their floodlights, just before you move on, their floodlights at Bloomfield Road, they come from the Molyneux.
Did they? Right.
And also the boardroom, the original boardroom. I don't know if it's the same now, whether they've had it redeveloped. I don't know, but was built from wood from one of Lord Nelson's flagships.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
That might be mentioned in here.
See, I know I've got useless information. I don't know intelligent stuff.
It's good. These fascinating things, isn't it? How did it happen? Is always you think straight away. How did that happen then? How did the floodlights get from Molyneux to Blackpool? So, do you know the answer, Gabbie?
Yeah, they were redeveloping the Molyneux, and they had them up there at Bloomfield Road. And one of the flagships of Nelson, I can't remember the name of the ship, but it was wrecked on the coast there, and they took the wood and they used the wood from the shipwreck to make the boardroom there at Blackpool.
Excellent, excellent. The last one I'll give a shout out for Conker's Editions is 101 Manchester City match worn shirts, etc. So great book for obviously Man City fans, but also football geeks and people who love a football shirt. I had to glance through this, and it's brilliant. It's really just take you through memories. You see the classic shirt, if you think straight away, you can think of a particular player wearing that, like Colin Bell. What a player he was in that. In the blue of Manchester City, etc. But it's just a great collection of shirts for the years and how it's changed from, I think you were saying earlier, you didn't have a badge on them once they did you. Now you got a badge, now you got the advertising, etc. They're getting more and more, I don't know how to put it, more designer, aren't they? Let's say bit by bit. So I'm not sure.
I think that new Manchester City kit that I watched the other night. I mean, it's almost like a top that you buy from the club shop. I think it's absolutely awful. But that iconic Manchester City kit with the kind of the sash down it. Got an idea. Malcolm Allison brought that in. He definitely brought the colours to Crystal Palace because he changed the colours and the kit of Crystal Palace, didn't he? He was very instrumental, an absolute pioneer, as did Jimmy Hill with the Sky Blue Revolution back in the day when he took over at Coventry City. I think Jimmy Hill and Malcolm Allison don't get the credit for what they actually done for football and for their football clubs in particular, and done it in a way that I think it's fair to say got up people's noses at times, but I think you must look at them with the respect that they deserve and should be given. Yeah,
absolutely. But great book, great trip down memory lane through just unique. I love these unique ideas of giving the history of the club literally through the shirts, the war, etc. Because we all remember our heroes, don't we, and what kind of they were wearing, etc. So lots of Colin Bell. And then just what of a shout out before we move on is another brilliant publisher, probably along the lines of Legends Publishing, is DC Thompson. They're based up in Scotland, and I've got a couple of their books here, and they are right up there in my favourite books, really are, because these are coffee table books. So they're called, it's a series of books called Lifting Over the Turnstiles, Gabbie.
Yeah, I've seen them. I've seen you promoting them, yeah. There's 3 books, isn't there?
Yeah, volumes 1, 2, and 3, and I've got 2 and 3 here, and it's volume 2. It's got a foreword from Craig Browne. Craig Browne. So the old Scotland manager. But the images in there, so it's twofold. It goes over both pages, the whole pitch. The one I'm looking at here, but it's just a brilliant picture book in terms of going through the history, etc. And it's both a glimpse in terms of inside the ground, outside the ground, and some of the images are just crazy. The front cover of volume 3, I'm looking at it now, you've literally got the people dragging people up from the turnstiles, pulling them up over the wall to get into the ground, etc. It's fair to say health and safety is not high priority, let's say, in this picture. And what is even better in the picture, if you look closely, if anyone's looking at it, there's a policeman at the front who's literally looking the other way. He's thinking, I'm not getting involved.
So what's he going to do? I mean, literally, I'm looking at Grandad, What Was Football Like in the 70s, the book. With the TV and the glasses and the coffee cup and the book on the table. And I'm looking at the spine cup there at Hillsborough because it's Sheffield Wednesday versus Santos when Pelly comes to town. And if you look at that spine cop there, and I've said to TC before, one of the greatest ends in football, and it's almost like a Where's Wally picture. There are so many, there's thousands. I don't think anybody in Sheffield went to work or school that day. It's quite incredible. And if you've got a policeman there, what the hell's that policeman going to do?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I'll just add on that, though, is the picture here I'm looking at is Hamden Park. You know, the place is incredible. And it actually has got here, Hamden Park in 1960, before the floodlights were erected. It had, at its peak in 1937, which is staggering, its capacity, or could you have a guess?
149,000.
How many?
149,000.
No, it was 183,688. So that's not far off. Almost 250,000 people. 70,000 short, but it's just phenomenal. And then when you see the actual light, similar to that from the cover at Hillsborough, kind of, they're just how did but yeah, I read it out again, 183,388.
I'm almost certain, Andy, when Eintracht Frankfurt played Real Madrid, would it be the 1961 final at Hamden Park?
Yes.
I'm sure there was 149,000 there that day. That's why I said 149.
Yeah,
but they used to cram them in there at the Hamden Park.
They did, and it's just great pictures. You got one of them where there's literally a couple of kids that have climbed up this bit. It's not like a pylon, let's say, and they're literally hanging in the top areas, going help safety. The mothers or the fathers will be looking up, thinking, "What on earth are they doing?" But
mothers and fathers were probably there doing the bleeding same in them days.
You know what? Just thinking 149,000. I think was it Celtic against Leeds as well, if I remember.
Probably was, yeah.
Another game. I mean, I was at Hamden Park, if I remember.
Yeah.
Was that? No, but of course that would have been at Celtic, wouldn't it? So, but again, they had huge crowds there, didn't they?
Scottish football back in them days, the attendances that they had were quite phenomenal. It was always, I'm sure, even up to the 70s. You know, when it was 100,000 at Wembley, it was 120 at Hampden.
Yeah.
You know, I'm sure because they used to play the cup final on the same day, didn't they? So at half time they'd go over to like the Scottish Cup final or the end of it, and they'd show you all the goals from the Scottish Cup final. And I'm sure there was always more in Scotland than what there was in England. And of course, when the Jocks used to come down, they'd take over Wembley as well. I remember as a young kid watching a game and saying to my dad, "Where's this, Dad? Hampden or Wembley?" It's at Wembley, son. Blimey, there's a lot of Scots there.
Travelling numbers, don't they?
Oh, don't they just love the football? Football, isn't it? It's football in Scotland, not football. Football.
That's it, absolutely. But hopefully that's done it justice in terms of these books, though. Volumes 2 and 3, Lifting Over Turnstiles. The pictures are just incredible. And when you see that volume of people, it's staggering. So you think of those ones up front. How did they get to the toilet? So there you go.
We didn't.
We know. We don't. It's not quite like new ground now, is it?
I mean, if you actually went, if you said to your mate there at the middle of the goals, "I'm going to the toilet," it'd take you a week to get there. You just literally open it and just do it as you're standing.
That's it.
You have to. You can't move.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what's Father Christmas bringing you, mate? Have you got a list of books that you want Santa to bring down your chimney?
There's always going to be a couple more. Yeah, I've picked out, and there's a number of books that's coming out in the new year as well. I suppose if I just give it a mention towards the ones that's coming in the new year.
Absolutely.
Coming in 2002. There is, if I talk about the ones probably in the early part of next year, you got in January, February, March. There's a book coming out called Eddie Hapgood.
Yep.
I think I mentioned it on one of your...
Yep, we have.
Terry, haven't you? So,
yep,
and again, someone that's not familiar to me.
Wasn't
really.
he born in Swindon, if memory serves me right, without going through my notes? Or Bristol? Yes. So I swear he was a West Country lad, wasn't he? And was an icon in the 30s of both Arsenal and England, Eddie Hopgood. I've got no idea. Is it one of his relatives, daughter or something, granddaughter, that's wrote the book?
Yeah, that's it. Lynn Hopgood. Yeah, his daughter,
isn't it? Yeah.
That's it. So, yeah, he was young, unknown in Bristol, became Arsenal, England, and a national hero in the 1930s. So it just sounds a fascinating book. So it sounds a fascinating guy in terms of his history, except as well. So, so that's one of the books that's coming out in the new year. Looking forward to. There's a couple of books that's going to be coming out in the new year as well about the FA Cup, because it's obviously been the 150th anniversary.
Yep.
And so there's a book on the official history of the FA Cup, and there's one from Pitch Publishing that's coming out as well, which is more pictorial imagery around the FA Cup. And one other shout out is only because I know the area fairly well. It's called Foss against Loughs, which is Leicestershire's forgotten football rivalry.
Right.
And with Leicester Foss against Loughs, etc. So it sounds an intriguing kind of book. But yeah, it's going back to I'm sure it's referring back to the Victorian days. I just love a rivalry from back then. So a bit of potted history in terms of the area. So, but apparently they used to get crowds of 10,000 plus. So, but the Loughs now, they're Loughborough FC. I think they're now playing Leicestershire's Senior League.
Right.
So yeah, they've look at Leicester. They've gone to see now. Premier League, established Premier League club, you could say now.
Just shows you, doesn't it, how the one fall and the other one progress.
Absolutely, yeah.
Quite incredible. There was a book that he was promoting recently, Bristol City player.
Oh, yes. Goodness, it's gone from my head. It'll come back in a minute. Give me a second. Jeff Merrick. Jeff Merrick.
Yeah?
Yeah. So, The Life with Robbins and Beyond. By Neil Palmer. Neil Palmer's done a number of excellent books based around Bristol City. He did the He's There, He's There, He's Here, He's There, the Jerry Gow story. But no, that's it. It's coming out in February.
Fella. Yeah.
That's the same fella, Neil Palmer. So is, as it says here, one of the most anticipated books on a player to ever pull on the red shirt of Bristol City. So
I'm not too familiar with that lad, Merrick, are you?
No, not overly myself. I'm sure.
No, I'm not.
When you see his photo, he's one of those. I recognise him. I recognise him. He was seen as one of the country's top defenders, but his life and career was thrown into turmoil. So it sounds an interesting story because, he and 7 other players were asked to rip up their contracts.
Yeah, Chrissy Garland was one of them. I thought it was round that time. They literally ripped up the contracts and saved Bristol City Football Club, didn't they? But Chrissy Garland was one of them.
Yeah.
I've got an idea in them days as well. Joe Royle was playing for Bristol City.
Yeah, you might be right. Yeah, it's on there. But again, really interesting stories. So, but there's many others that's coming out next year. If you go further into the year as well, there's Jonathan Wilson, one of the great writers, has got a book that's coming out next year. I think it's towards the autumn time, where it's called Two Brothers, and it's a dual biography of both Jack and Bobby Charlton.
Okay.
That'll be really fascinating. So, because I've not seen a book or heard of a book where it's actually the both of them, Jack and Bobby. I've seen lots of, obviously they've done autobiographies themselves.
Sure, there's been one before Jack and Bobby, if memory serves me right.
Yeah, did you know the part that it doesn't spring to my head, so I'm probably not doing it justice. But yeah, so that'll be an interesting book that's coming out next year. So it looks like it's going to be another busy year of football books, certainly. And one other I'll give you a shout out is called High Noon, and it's about the Falklands, the Hand of God, and the Goal of a Century, and it's by a guy called Michael Gibbons. He's a great author. He's been involved in a number of books, and it's the story of the famous World Cup quarter-final in '86 between England and Argentina, and that very colourful and glorious-looking Azteca Stadium in Mexico City. So it's all about the tense political situation occurring so many years after the Falklands and what have you. And then obviously Diego Maradona just took over, didn't he? In one way or another. But in terms of incredible moments and another moment where it's incredible for different reasons, isn't it? The hand of God moment. So
yeah, it was. I mean, that was England's first game against Argentina since the Falklands War, and Argentina, I don't think we're ever going to lose that game. I think that well, again, when countries go to war, I think it's a sad indictment of humanity. And Argentina, to this day, I believe, I'd done an interview with blind Dave Healy many years ago. He's an absolute legend of these areas, and he's run many marathons, etc. I mean, he's blind. Always makes me laugh that the lad that he runs with, I couldn't tell you who it is, but we all do know of blind Dave Healy, and he's on TalkSport quite a lot. And he was doing I think 7 marathons in 7 different continents or something ridiculous. Dave was, and I'd phoned him up, and he said, "Oh, Gabbie, how you doing? Where are you, Dave?" He said, "I'm on the top of my shed on the roof, just putting the felt on." And I'm like, "You can't see, you're blind. This fella is incredible." But they got wind, because he was doing these marathons, and they got wind that he was flying into Argentina airspace, and I can't remember the exact details, but the Argentinians made him land, I'm sure I'm correct in saying, made him land on the Falklands. Right. And it was a political potato that they were playing with, because at that time, and this was quite recently, Argentina couldn't visit the Falklands. There was no commercial flights from Argentina to the Falklands, so they could visit the graves of the war dead. And they kind of used that as kind of leverage to see if they would be able to do that, because, again, it's like British territory, isn't it? Although the Falklands, apparently nobody actually owned it. Nobody actually wanted it back in the olden days. Yeah, but the British type of claimed it, and then when they invaded, it all kicked off. But I think that game then was the first one, and I think that really the Argentinians' backs were up, and I don't think they were ever going to lose that game. And I think when Maradona punched it in, it was almost for the Argentinian nation, and as he perceived it, it was the hand of God goal. But the other goal was incredible. Steve Hodges still got his shirt, by the way, hasn't he?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, not just there's a few of them, isn't there? Peter Reid, etc. And he took on it was a magical moment, wasn't it? So
again, Diego Maradona is just an incredible player.
Very moments like that, especially when it's against your team, where you know you're witnessing something. You're like, that's incredible. Yeah. You put your hands together. But as a football fan, you know greatness when you see it, don't you?
Oh, you certainly do, and no one greater. Well, fewer greater than Maradona. I think you'd have to put Maradona up there with Cruyff and the likes of Garrincha and Pelé and stuff, and some of these young kids that haven't seen Diego Maradona play football. By my word, what a player he was! Come over to England, I think first time in 1980. I remember the game, we beat them 3-1. In fact, my dad and my brother went to that game for some stupid reason. I declined the offer of a ticket, but I wasn't Maradona mad in those days, because we had a lot of press cuttings about this young Argentinian 16, 17-year-old kid. And that day at Wembley, he missed. It just went past the post, but it was almost identical to the goal that he scored in 1986. Maradona was an absolute genius, a legend, and my tea is ready as we talk. So it's time to say goodbye. It's time for me to have a top up. Thank you so much for your time, Andy, and thank you everybody for listening.
Excellent, and Merry Christmas to you all. I hope Santa brings you the football books that you're after, and we'll see you in the new year.
Well, the one thing's for certain, Andy, if Father Christmas brings me the football books that I wish, I certainly won't be reading them in 2022, because I'll still be on page 106 of Grandad, What Was Football Like in the 70s.
Excellent. Next year, that's one of your New Year, what do they call it? Yeah,
resolutions.
Resolutions, that's it, to finish a book.
Yeah. Good luck with that.
Excellent, thanks.
Cheers, Andy. Merry Christmas, mate. And we will reconvene early January to see what you've read over the festive season and what else is coming out. And guys, please keep checking out Andy's sites on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, MyFootballBooks, or look onto his website, myfootballbooks.com, subscribe and get this wonderful newsletter, and get buying the football books written by some of the wonderful historians and authors that we've got promoting and writing about the wonderful, beautiful game, which is association football.
Excellent.
Cheers,
Merry Christmas. Bye-bye.
Cheers, mate. Ta-ra a bit.
Bye-bye.
Ta-ra.
Bye.
As dawn broke over the seven seas, the pirates of the Crimson Galleon set sail for adventure. But there was one problem: paperwork. Mountains of it. Filing, invoices, you name it.
This work ain't fit for a pirate.
Luckily, their captain had an idea. She used the smart buying tools on Amazon Business so they could work more efficiently and get back to doing what they do best. I know, right? Amazon Business, your partner for smart business buying.